Some battles don't begin with shouting. They begin with silence. Repeated, unspoken lines crossed over and over again, until something inside you just snaps. You try to be polite, patient, civil. But civility doesn't work on people who see kindness as weakness. That's how it started, with a garage, mine, and one neighbor who decided rules didn't apply to her. What followed wasn't just a feud. It was a war of petty offenses, quiet rage, and one final move she never saw coming. This isn't just about parking. It's about boundaries, pride, and what happens when the wrong person gets pushed one step too far. I moved to Brookside Hollow for a fresh start. After my divorce, after years of living in a cramped apartment with noise bleeding through every wall and bitterness bleeding through every conversation, I wanted quiet, peace, structure. And for the first few weeks, that's exactly what the neighborhood seemed to offer. Fresh-cut lawns, polite nods from dog-walking retirees, HOA newsletters folded neatly in my mailbox. I was fine with the rules. I liked rules. As an architect, structure gave me comfort. It told me where things belonged. It gave me control in a world that had felt so damn chaotic for too long. That illusion of control shattered on a Wednesday morning. I had returned from a late client consultation, exhausted and already dreading the stack of paperwork on my desk. As I turned the corner into my driveway, I hit the brakes. Hard. Someone else's car was parked in my garage, not across the street, not on the curb, in my damn garage. At first, I blinked, confused. Maybe it was a delivery gone wrong. Maybe someone mistook my unit for theirs. It was a black Lexus, clean, recently waxed, with a vanity plate that read Dale 01. That's when it clicked. Veronica Dale, 2 houses down. The neighborhood queen bee, 50-something, perpetually tan. The type of woman who treated every HOA rule like it was federal law, except when it came to herself. She once sent a violation notice to a neighbor because their Christmas lights disrupted the aesthetic continuity of the block. Another time she demanded a newlywed couple remove a welcome mat because it was too whimsical. And now, apparently, she had decided that my garage belonged to her. I parked on the street, walked up to her porch, and rang the bell. She answered in yoga pants, sipping cucumber water, eyebrows raised, like I was the inconvenience. "Yes?" I forced a smile. "Hi, sorry to bother you. I think you might have accidentally parked in my garage." Veronica didn't miss a beat. "Oh, yes. I've been meaning to catch you. My driveway's a little narrow, and yours is much easier to get in and out of. I figured it wouldn't be a problem." She said it like she was asking to borrow a cup of sugar. I stared at her for a second, trying to process the casual absurdity of what she'd just said. "Right. Except, it is a problem. Because it's my property." Her expression didn't change. "Well, sure. But I assumed you wouldn't mind. It's just a car. It's just my garage." She gave a tight, dismissive smile and took a sip from her glass. "Don't be difficult." Then she closed the door. In my face. I stood there for a full 10 seconds, replaying the interaction in my head. She wasn't joking. She wasn't embarrassed. She wasn't sorry. She believed deeply and sincerely that her inconvenience trumped my ownership. And that was the moment I knew. This wasn't going to be a neighborly misunderstanding. This was war. The next few days confirmed it. Every time I came home, her Lexus was there. Perfectly aligned, centered between my garage lines like she'd practiced it. At first, I tried knocking again. Then I left a note. Then I called the HOA. Their response? A shrug. The board had been recently overhauled, and the new president, Tyrese Caldwell, was still reviewing prior relationships. Translation: they were afraid of crossing Veronica, who used to run the entire HOA like her personal fiefdom. So, I started documenting. I installed a camera angled at the garage. I kept logs, dates, times, pictures. And when I confronted her again, she waved me off with a smug, "If it bothers you so much, why not park on the street like the others?" The others. I wasn't the others. I paid for that garage. I lived there. It was mine. And the more she dismissed me, the more determined I became. I tried one last time, civil, straightforward, clear. Veronica, I'm asking you. Please don't park in my garage again. This isn't a suggestion. It's a boundary. She looked me over like I'd just tracked mud onto her marble floors. Some people, she said, sipping that ever-present cucumber water, just don't understand community spirit. And then she walked away. Something inside me clicked. A quiet, deliberate gear. That was the last warning. Because if she didn't understand boundaries the nice way, then it was time she learned the hard way. I didn't sleep much that night. Not out of rage, not anymore, but focus. A kind of still, sharp awareness that only kicks in when someone's challenged you to a silent war and thinks you won't fire back. I woke up early the next morning and parked my car as tight to Veronica's Lexus as humanly possible, an inch of clearance between bumpers. I went inside, made coffee, sat by the window, and waited. It didn't take long. At exactly 8:12 a.m., Veronica strutted out of her front door in a power walk pace, heels clicking like punctuation marks on concrete. She stopped short at the sight of the sandwich I'd created with our cars. She tried to open her driver's side door. No luck. Tried the passenger side. Still, no room. I watched her circle both vehicles like a lion, pacing the edge of a cage that shouldn't exist. Then came the knock. Bang, bang, bang! I opened the door, coffee in hand, face calm. You parked too close, she snapped. I sipped my coffee. So did you. Her jaw tightened. I have a 9 a.m. appointment. I looked at her, then at my wrist, which wasn't wearing a watch. And I have nowhere to be. What a coincidence. She stared at me. The realization crept across her face in slow, bitter waves. You're doing this on purpose, I smiled. I'm doing what any homeowner would do when someone takes their property for granted, defending it. She glared. You think this is going to change anything? No, I said, sipping again. I think it's going to start something. And it did. What followed wasn't one of those explosive, screaming matches people post on neighborhood forums. It was worse, quieter, more insidious. A Cold War. Veronica kept parking in my garage. But now she varied the timing, sometimes before dawn, sometimes during lunch. Like she was trying to stay unpredictable. A way to show me I couldn't stop her. I started blocking her in, leaving notes, filing repeated HOA reports with pictures, timestamps, and legal citations. The HOA, of course, responded with the urgency of a DMV on a snow day. We're currently evaluating board policies. We suggest working this out civilly. Meanwhile, other neighbors started noticing. It began with the retirees, Mr. and Mrs. Halberstam from across the street, watching everything from their porch like judges at a fencing match. Then came Lindsay from Unit 3B, who passed me in the driveway one morning and murmured, I saw the Lexus again. She did the same thing to the Bakers last year. The Bakers? I hadn't known that. Apparently, they left the neighborhood quietly after a 6-month back and forth with Veronica over shrub height and guest parking. That's when it hit me. She wasn't just entitled. She was practiced. This was a pattern. She pushed. People folded. She escalated. People moved. I wasn't going to be one of them. So I upped the ante. I created a paper trail. I filed a certified letter with the HOA citing property encroachment under California Civil Code. I included high-res printouts of photos, a log of dates, even a formal notice of trespass. Still, she came. So I installed a motion-triggered floodlight over my garage. When her Lexus pulled in, the entire driveway lit up like a prison yard at midnight. That week, I caught her flipping it off twice. One day, I returned home to find a passive-aggressive note pinned to my front door in curly handwriting. Not everything needs to be a battle. Let it go. V. But it wasn't a battle anymore. It was a blueprint. And I was just getting started. The thing about battles isn't who throws the first punch. It's who draws the better map. And by now, I had mine. Veronica thought she was dealing with a pushover, a quiet guy with a mortgage and a mild temper. What she didn't know was that I'd been raised by a trial lawyer and a high school principal. My childhood was basically closing arguments and detention slips. So I stopped playing defense. First, I installed a high-resolution surveillance camera pointed directly at the garage. Motion-activated, night vision, cloud backup. Every time her car crossed the threshold, it was recorded, time-stamped, and uploaded off-site. Then I upgraded my legal game. I contacted a friend from college who now worked in municipal enforcement and asked for guidance. His advice was sharp and simple. If she keeps encroaching after certified warnings, you can file for a civil injunction, especially with evidence. Perfect. So I drafted the warning, typed, formatted, signed, subject. Unauthorized vehicle on private property. Cease and desist. Dear Ms. Wren, this letter serves as formal notice that your continued unauthorized use of my garage constitutes a violation of California Civil Code, SR 1006, and may result in legal action. I hand-delivered it. Slipped it under her door at 7 a.m. By noon, I saw her standing in her driveway, rereading it with the same expression people give parking tickets. Part disbelief, part rage, all indignation. That night, she posted in the HOA Facebook group, "Has anyone else noticed how some residents are getting very territorial? I thought we were a community, not a courtroom." The comments were mostly sympathy emojis, but 2 neighbors liked it, then unliked it. A sign, small but telling. Then came the shift. Out of nowhere, I started getting gifts on my doorstep. A bottle of wine, a bag of lemons. A small note from an anonymous neighbor. "Thanks for standing up." Turns out I wasn't alone. Veronica had been ticking people off for years, micromanaging paint colors, reporting backyard parties, once even trying to fine a single mom for excessively loud laughter. I became the neighborhood's silent hero. And Veronica? She sensed it. I saw it in her eyes the next time we passed each other on the sidewalk. Gone was the smug half-smile. Now it was tight-lipped, calculating. The kind of expression someone wears when they realize the tide is shifting. That same week, she started getting creative. She moved her car 1 house down and began hover parking, half in her driveway, half across the shared sidewalk. Just enough to make a statement without violating any single code. Or so she thought. But I had already taken it a step further. Using the footage I'd collected, I compiled a report and submitted it to both the HOA legal board and the city zoning office. Not as a petty complaint, but as a safety concern. I documented how her vehicle consistently obstructed visibility, blocked emergency access lines, and even created pedestrian hazards. The clincher? One clip of a delivery guy tripping over her front bumper while trying to deliver a package. And with that, the gears of bureaucracy began to turn. Veronica got her first official city citation 2 days later. She responded by leaving a passive-aggressive sign in her window. Some people mistake control for order. Let that sink in. I let it sink in all right. Then I sent her one back. Some people mistake audacity for authority. Let that sink in. I printed it in bold Helvetica and taped it to my trash bin, which I now rolled out precisely on the line where her Lexus used to park. The trap wasn't just baited. It was snapping shut. Because now the neighborhood was watching. And the law was starting to pay attention. Power doesn't disappear overnight. It frays, thread by thread, until it unravels right in front of the one who thought it would last forever. And Veronica Wren? She was unraveling. The city citation hit her harder than expected. I had assumed she'd brush it off, maybe argue it in some online hearing. But I underestimated something critical, her image. Her control over this pristine, Pinterest-perfect neighborhood was more than power. It was her identity. So when official paperwork arrived with her name in violation, it wasn't just a fine. It was a fracture. A week after the citation, the cracks were visible. She stopped patrolling the sidewalks. No more clipboard walks. No more surprise inspections. Her yard, once a temple of HOA-approved landscaping, started looking human. A weed near the mailbox. A single crack in the birdbath. I didn't gloat, not yet, because I was onto something bigger. See, while reviewing the HOA's bylaws, which I'd now memorized better than the alphabet, I came across an odd clause in the leadership section. A requirement tucked into the fine print. Any elected board member must reside full-time at the property listed in their HOA filing. Harmless, right? Unless someone isn't actually living where they say they are. Out of curiosity, or maybe pure spite, I searched the public property database, and that's when I found it. Veronica Wren was listed on a lease agreement 2 towns over, dated 4 months ago. She wasn't even living here anymore. At first, I thought it had to be a mistake. Maybe a rental property, maybe a vacation home. But then I checked the HOA meeting logs. For the past 3 months, all minutes were filed digitally. Zoom calls, emails. No in-person quorum. No one had actually seen her in the community center in weeks. She was ruling remotely. That's when it hit me. Veronica Wren wasn't just a power-hungry neighbor. She was an absentee tyrant, enforcing rules on a place she no longer called home. It was the moment the chessboard flipped. I gathered my evidence: lease agreement, time-stamped footage, digital HOA meeting records. Then I made a call. Not to a lawyer this time. To her own board. Because if there's one thing petty tyrants hate more than losing, it's losing from within. I emailed the vice president of the HOA, a woman named Sarah Nguyen. She'd been quiet during the whole saga, always second to Veronica, rarely speaking up. But she responded to my message in under an hour. This explains a lot. We met that weekend at a local coffee shop. I brought the folder. She brought the resignation letter template, just in case. You know, she said as she scanned the documents, Veronica's been making unilateral decisions for months. She doesn't even consult us anymore. Technically, I replied, she's not allowed to. Not if she doesn't live here. Sarah closed the file and leaned back. You think she'll go quietly? I smiled. She's already screaming on the inside. We drafted a motion to call an emergency vote, citing the violation of HOA residency bylaws and misuse of authority. Sarah agreed to gather support from the remaining board members. And just like that, Veronica's house of cards was trembling. But we weren't done. The neighborhood had watched this drama unfold from their porches, their windows, their phones. They needed one final push, something undeniable. So I released the footage. Not all of it. Just one clip, Veronica, mid-rant, telling me, "Your garage is just more convenient. Deal with it." It hit the community Facebook group like wildfire. The comments flooded in. She's been doing this for years. She fined me for having Christmas lights up past January. Wait, she doesn't even live here anymore? And then, the most damning reply of all, from Sarah herself. We're looking into a formal vote of removal. Stay tuned. Just like that, the crown cracked. And Lucas? I was no longer the target. I was becoming something else entirely. The emergency meeting was scheduled for Thursday at 7 p.m. sharp. The email came from the HOA board itself, signed by Sarah Nguyen, now acting vice president, and co-signed by 2 more members I'd barely ever seen in public before. Subject line: Urgent HOA business, residency and conduct vote. Location: Sunset Hills. Community Center agenda: discussion and vote on potential removal of President Veronica Wren, per Section 3.4 HOA bylaws. You didn't need to read between the lines to know what was coming. The Queen was about to be dethroned. I arrived 15 minutes early, mostly to make sure I got a good seat, but also because, for once, I actually wanted to see everyone's face. And they came. Oh, they came. Residents who never attended a single meeting were there, folding chairs, scraping across the floor, muttering, whispering. There was Mrs. Dale from Lot 17, clutching a printout of her sprinkler violation. Mr. Rosen from the corner house, holding a stack of citations like war medals. Even the Garcias, who usually kept to themselves, showed up with a baby stroller and looks that could cut glass. This wasn't a neighborhood anymore. This was a jury, and the trial was about to begin. At exactly 7 o'clock p.m., Veronica walked in, late, yet acting like she owned the air we breathed. Designer blazer, perfect hair, a thick red folder clutched under her arm like a holy book. Her eyes scanned the room and narrowed as she took in the crowd. She knew. But she wasn't going to show weakness. She never did. Sarah stood from the front table and cleared her throat. Thank you, everyone, for attending. As you're all aware, tonight's meeting is in response to serious concerns regarding board leadership, residency compliance, and the application of HOA regulations. Veronica didn't wait. She stepped forward and interrupted like she always did. I've reviewed the agenda, and let me just say this. I've followed every rule. These accusations are a distraction. If people have grievances, they should submit them through official channels. Funny, someone muttered from the crowd. That's what we tried, for 2 years. Laughter followed. Soft at first, then louder. Veronica ignored it. Sarah nodded politely. We appreciate your position, Veronica. But tonight, the board will be presenting findings of non-residency and unauthorized enforcement actions. The floor will then open for discussion. A vote will follow. Veronica's jaw tightened. This is a witch hunt. Sarah smiled, just a little. Then I suggest you bring your broom. And with that, the presentation began. They showed the lease agreement, the time-stamped Zoom logs, photos of her other residents 2 towns over, complete with delivery receipts and utility records in her name. Veronica tried to speak, but each objection was calmly silenced by a louder fact. Then the video started. Clips of her berating neighbors, threatening fines, dismissing disability accommodation requests. The one that made the room gasp. A video of her telling a mother with a wheelchair-bound child, "Your son's ramp is an eyesore. Either remove it or receive a fine." Someone whispered, "Monster." That was when it shifted. It wasn't just about bylaws anymore. It was about people. The mic was open to the residents. One by one, they stood. Rosen. She fined me $300 because my daughter's lemonade stand obstructed the sidewalk. That stand raised money for cancer research. Mrs. Dale. She said my lawn gnome was morally tasteless. What does that even mean? The Garcias. She knocked on our door and told us our children were too loud at 3 p.m. on a Saturday. Even Sarah herself spoke. She made me remove my pride flag, claimed it was visual clutter. That's when I knew who she really was. And then, something unexpected happened. Veronica started to crack. For the first time in the history of Sunset Hills, she didn't have a comeback. No citation, no clipboard, no control. She reached for her red folder, her last card, and held it up like it would save her. These are letters of support, she said, from residents who believe in order, who believe in standards, people like me. She opened the folder. It was empty, dead silence. Then, from the back, a voice. Check again. Maybe it's a mirror. That broke the room. A wave of laughter. Even Sarah chuckled, trying not to. Veronica's hands trembled. This isn't fair, she snapped. You don't understand the responsibility it takes to keep a place like this from falling apart. Sarah looked at her, calm, composed, and said the words that would seal it all. No. We just finally remembered that we run this neighborhood. Not you. The vote was called. 32 hands went up for removal. 1 abstention. Veronica herself. No votes in her favor. She stood motionless. Then, in a final moment of bizarre dignity, she gathered her things, lifted her chin, and walked out of the room without a word. No drama, no farewell, just silence, like power slipping through an open door. 3 weeks had passed since Veronica Wren walked out of the HOA meeting, never to return. Her house, once an untouchable fortress of fines and flower arrangements, now sat empty, the front yard overgrown, her infamous white Lexus no longer parked diagonally across 2 visitor spaces. At first, people expected retaliation. Some swore she'd file lawsuits. Others thought she'd move back in, stronger, bitterer, weaponized. But none of that happened. No letters, no calls, just silence. Sunset Hills changed. The change didn't happen all at once. It came in the little things. The neighborhood group chat stopped being a battlefield of petty complaints and started sounding more like a neighborhood. People actually said good morning. Birthdays were announced again. The Johnson twins finally set up their lemonade stand without a permit. There were no more whispers, no more sarcastic jabs about shrub height or mailbox color. But the biggest shift? It was in people's faces. They no longer looked over their shoulders before putting out Halloween decorations or hosting a backyard barbecue. The fear, subtle but ever-present, was gone. It was like breathing clean air after years of smog. The new board, under Sarah Nguyen, held an open forum every month. They reviewed the rules, line by line, with input from actual residents. They scrapped the most ridiculous regulations first. The no lawn chair rule, the seasonal flag restriction, the no visible garden hoses clause. When they got to the garage policy, Sarah looked at me from across the table and smiled. "We're keeping this one," she said, and adding a line about trespassers and long-term misuse. "We call it the Jacobs Amendment." I couldn't help but laugh. Me, Jacob Harris. Just a quiet guy who used to work from home, drink too much coffee, and fight one war. The war for his parking space. Now I was a name in the bylaws. Somehow. Poetic. But none of it really hit me until that Saturday. I was out front, washing my car in the driveway. It was something I used to avoid because the old HOA rules banned visible auto maintenance. God forbid anyone catch you with a sponge. This time, though, I had music playing. I was barefoot, free. And then a little voice called out from across the street. "Hey, Mr. Harris, want some lemonade?" I turned. It was the Johnson twins, their stand set up proudly on the corner. Hand-drawn sign, paper cups, no permits, no citations, just 2 kids being kids. I walked over, dropped a 5 in their tip jar, and took a cup. Their mom waved from the porch. "We really appreciate everything you did, Jacob." I smiled. "I just wanted my garage back." She laughed. "Yeah, but you gave us more than that." The truth was, I hadn't set out to lead a rebellion. I wasn't a hero. I just wanted to come home without a fight. But somewhere along the line, people started standing beside me, and that made all the difference. Later that night, a new neighbor moved in. Young couple, 2 toddlers, exhausted but excited. They waved as they unloaded boxes. "I'm Jacob," I said. "Welcome to Sunset Hills." They looked around, cautious. "Is it true what we heard?" the woman asked. "That this place used to be kind of intense?" I nodded. It was. "And now?" I smiled. "Now it's ours. Now